Initial caution. I did not experience any improvement in my condition. I devoted a great deal of time to prayer and Bible study while I was undergoing treatment. After that, the doctor again recommended surgery as a last resort, this time on the grounds that the conservative measures had failed. We scheduled the procedure for a later date. Please pray for me. I contacted my loved ones. The nurse informed me that I appeared to be the most calm patient she had ever seen in the hours leading up to my operation. They put me under anesthesia the second I stepped foot in the surgery room. A haze began to form over my awareness. I started to feel quite uneasy after a time. My heart began to race and felt like it would cease beating any second now. It was as if an invisible force were squeezing my airway, making it more and harder for me to breathe. I strained to open my eyes, but my body refused to cooperate. My body began to constantly fight against the terror I was experiencing, but I was unable to stop it. During this time, it occurred to me that I was having a serious bodily reaction, which could have been caused by an allergy to the medication or some other problem. I was praying the doctor would intervene swiftly so I could resume my regular breathing and pulse rate. The world grew silent, and my agony vanished after a few more moments. Upon opening my eyes, I discovered that I was atop my room ceiling. It seemed like the doctor was telling the nurse to grab extra blood bags. My cheeks appeared white. Even though I recognized it as my own body, I felt no fear or concern. I slipped past the room's walls and into the hospital corridor. Upon passing the barricade, I encountered no opposing forces. An open elevator door caught my eye as I was walking down the corridor. I took notice of a man's haste and worry as he bolted out. Carrying a briefcase, he wore a black jacket. Quickly making his way to the surgery room, he paused at the door. He was engaged in discussion with a different physician. Even though I can't put my finger on it, I did learn that the man was a doctor throughout our chat. They were bickering, with the doctor expressing his displeasure with the doctor wearing the black coat. I felt a sudden, unexplained tug and began to descend through the hospital ceiling. I kept climbing until I was able to get over the hospital and across the roof. My flight over the city accelerated the moment I left the hospital. Dashed for a while after entering a cave-like place. Then, just in front of me, a little brilliant light emerged. In the light I emerged, an individual's rear end was visible in front of me. Subconsciously, I felt compelled to trail behind him. In addition to his lengthy locks, he sported a lengthy white robe and shoes. As if to say, "Come closer," he waved and grinned at me. Coming closer to him brought an unfathomable sense of contentment and delight. I didn't feel awkward or alienated from him because of how friendly and welcoming he was. I was warmly welcomed by him. I reflected on my life in his company here. There was something I observed that filled me with pride. When I was in college, I became a member of a volunteer group. We made it a weekly habit to visit a nearby town and provide assistance to the kids and the elderly. Their rooms would be cleaned, we would have conversations, and I would take the kids to play. I once encountered a sickly elderly grandma who hadn't left the house in quite some time. Consequently, I went for a stroll with her to the park. We strolled across the garden that day, and Grandma was beaming the whole time. Helping other people has great importance and delight for me, and this experience has shown me that. But when we reviewed my past, I also noticed something wrong that caused me to feel guilty and ashamed. I got a good grade on an exam in college by just copying and pasting someone else's answers. I experienced feelings of shame and remorse upon seeing this event. Both my teachers and I were cheated out of something important. I cocked my head and met Jesus' gaze when it was over. His countenance was soft and sympathetic, devoid of criticism or admiration. Worried about his opinion of me, I felt a twinge of anxiety. Jesus suddenly spoke up and asked if I wanted to hang out with him after a bit of silence. A mix of surprise and joy washed over me. "Sure," I said. Ascending a set of stairs, we were greeted by a breathtaking, picture-perfect scene. I had never seen such a variety of vibrant blooms in a meadow before. In the middle of the field ran a little river. We crossed the river, and across the other side, I could see the bodies of my departed loved ones. All of them had congregated. First, I saw my grandpa and dad. Like me, they were happy to see me. Although I initially failed to identify one of them, I eventually discovered that it belonged to my great-grandfather. I never met him because he died before I was born. We had a telepathic conversation. Jesus reminded me that it was not the right moment to embrace them across the river when I considered doing so. For a further stretch down the river, I trailed after him. In the distance, I beheld a stunning structure designed in the Greek style. There were numerous steps leading up to it, and it was a brilliant white. Numerous individuals were adorned in brilliant white robes, and massive columns of them stood before the entrance. I was drawn inside by Jesus. The inside felt like a veritable library. "Look, here is the library of heaven," Jesus declared, gesturing toward the rows of volumes beside him. Because I was so taken aback and thrilled, I just went to a bookshelf and grabbed a random book. I felt a burst of energy radiating from the pages of the book as the words illuminated them with a powerful light. I was going to open the book and take a look inside, but the language on the cover was completely foreign to me. Jesus seems to notice my bewilderment. There is a wealth of information in these books, some of which may be above your current comprehension. Here, you have the freedom to learn whatever you desire. As I perused the shelves, I came across a book that contained musical notation, which I proceeded to use in my writing with him. My research led me to believe that it documented every piece of music ever composed, from the earliest choral works to the most recent electronic compositions. Jesus smiled at me and said, "This library is not only for learning, but it can also help you discover your potential and become more complete." Jesus went up to a shelf of books, took one down, and gave it to me. As soon as I opened the cover, I saw a chronicle of my life spanning from the days of my youth up till the present. As Jesus beheld me, he spoke these words, "These are your history, and I know every moment you have encountered, for better or worse. And I love you. Whenever you needed me, I was always there. Now I am giving you a choice," Jesus continued. "You are free to return to earth and carry on with your voyage, or you can remain here with me." A compelling tug drew me closer to Jesus. I had a strong desire to remain here and be by his side, because to his care and concern, I felt more relaxed than before. Jesus asked me, "Can I see my family now?" The scene at the hospital came to my attention next. My mother was being spoken to by the doctor. I simply witnessed the scenario. I was unable to comprehend their dialogue. As I looked around, I saw scenes of people praying, with each prayer seeming like a note, and reaching out toward me. My mother worked extremely hard to raise me after my father passed away when I was a little child. I drew a blank when I considered her life after I stayed. Leaving this loving home was painful, but I knew I had to return. He stated, "If you choose to go back, most of the memories of being here will be erased." Jesus nodded and smiled when I told him I wanted to return to earth. With a gentle touch, Jesus touched the top of my head. "Do not be scared," he reassured. "No matter what, you can count on me to be your rock and a guiding light." Then I sensed a reassembly with my physical form. Gradually, clarity began to wash over my consciousness. My eyes gradually blinked open, and I was in a hospital bed. By my side, a doctor was keeping a close eye on my vitals. My energy surged back when I inhaled deeply. Jesus, I knew, was watching over me and directing my steps at all times. Once again, I felt energized. I had full confidence that what I was experiencing was genuine. Throughout those weeks, the love of Jesus remained with me. I spent 12 days in the hospital following surgery, alternating between the intensive care unit and the regular ward. Knowing that there was a purpose for my return gave me unwavering faith that I would make a full recovery. To this day, I can vividly recall the shock I felt upon first seeing the doctor who had saved my life. He was the doctor with the black coat, and we had never met before. It was a pleasure to meet this doctor. I told my mom about it not long after I got home. I informed her that during my surgery, my soul departed from my body. On the other side of the hall stood the doctor in the black coat. My mother started to question my veracity and disbelieve in my account of my heavenly encounter when I told her about it. The moment I brought up the fact that I had also met my great-grandfather in heaven, though my mother's voice turned grave. She wanted to know if I had seen him, so she probed for a detailed description. I started to paint a picture of how he looked. My description of him included a tall man with a mole under his right eye and a white beard. Some of the talks I had with him were also detailed. This news shocked my mother, as I had never met my great-grandfather, and there was no photo of him anywhere in the house. My mom could tell I wasn't being dishonest. Because my great-grandfather matched my description to a T, this startled her and strengthened her faith in the hereafter. The fact that she eventually came to think